Hello and welcome to this video about 1%ers or 1% gains. I've asked a couple of people this, if they wanted to see this video, and I've had an overwhelmingly positive response and people have asked me to make it. But it's not my idea, it's based on, obviously lots of research, but it's based on Mercy Brown's post. And if you know Mercy Brown, but she's a weightlifter from Britain. She's one of the most successful British weightlifters ever. I think she might actually be the most successful in terms of international competitions and representing Great Britain. But she made a video on Instagram about and these 1%ers they're kind of lifestyle things that you do outside of the gym just to make yourself maximize performance in the gym. So it's all about adaptive self-improvement. It's not about comparing yourself to others or professional athletes, because some of these things we just won't be able to do because of work and life and having kids or having deadlines. It's about being the best version of yourself. And really that will probably help maximize enjoyment as well in the sport. Obviously, when we're working at peak performance, when we're hitting PBs, that's when we're having the most fun usually. So it's just about being the best version of yourself. So I've got 4 factors. They're in some kind of importance order, lines get a little bit blurred towards the end, but the first 2 definitely have made the biggest impact for me. I'm going to go through them now. I'm going to say a couple of my examples. Now, especially when it comes to diet and sleep, some of the things I'll say, like, you don't have to do it. I'm not telling anyone you have to eat this way, you have to do this. It's fully up to you. We are lucky enough to make our own decisions, and we should be grateful for that. But you make your own decisions. If anyone has any questions, please let me know. But I feel like I'm speaking from a lot of experience on this, because when I first started, I progressed really quickly in weightlifting, but my lifestyle factors were terrible. Sometimes sleep was the big one for me. Staying up 2 nights, 3 nights in a row is my PB of no sleep. But obviously none of that was intentional. There's just issues in life. So that obviously hampered my performance a lot. My enjoyment of the sport was terrible at that time because I was terrible. I was lifting terribly and I was injured all the time. That was no surprise. But these are just these little things you can do outside the gym just to give you those little marginal gains in the gym for when that time comes where you've progressed to a point where just coming to the gym 3 times a week and doing nothing else isn't enough. A lot of you are there already. Probably most of you are kind of pushing that. You can live off that life quite a long time and still make gains, but I know a lot of you do some of this stuff anyway, which is great. But especially when the weight gets heavier, you'll start noticing you get way more niggles if you don't do this stuff, and performance will be pushed back. So I'm just going to go through them now. Remember, this is all about adaptive self-improvement, not comparing yourself to others. So we'll start. First one for me is sleep. So it's the most important one in my opinion. Now, before I get into anything in terms of sleep, if you're a shift worker, you're working the night shift, then your sleep will not be consistent. It will probably not be good quality and it will not be long. If you've got stressful jobs, then that's just, unfortunately, that's the way it is. So that's why it's about, you're trying to improve as much as you can for you. You're not trying to go, I need to get 10 hours incredible sleep because that's what the pro athletes are doing. No, they're getting paid for it. Their whole life is their sport. Yours is not. And that's, unfortunately, that's the way it is as kind of amateur athletes. But I've put sleep and I've put consistency, and that's the most important one. So I've actually read quite a lot of research that says that the consistency of sleep leads to quality of sleep, and that trumps length of time slept every single time. So if you've slept, it was a paper and it was testing some very strange ways of testing max power output, but it might have been an upper body dynamometer, which basically you push against an object and it tells you how much force you've exerted. But the group that slept 3 hours but really well, or 3 to 4 hours, outperformed the people that slept 6 to 8 hours but with disrupted sleep every single time, and that's by a large margin as well. So yeah, trying to get to bed at the similar time just to keep sleep cycles as consistent as possible. That's why sometimes when you're really tired, say your regular bedtime is 11, when you're kind of falling asleep at 10:30 because you're watching a film and there's an hour left, and you're falling asleep at 10:30, you think, I'll just watch the end of the film, I'll be fine. I'll go to sleep then. It gets to 11:30 and then you're wide awake. The reason why you've disrupted the sleep cycle and it is kind of too late for that day, so you've got to start again. So for me, it was actually about, this is so lame, but it was actually about trying to go to bed 1 minute earlier every day till I got down from like 11 o'clock to 10 o'clock. And I found that after the first couple of days I could make bigger jumps, but I couldn't say, if I've been going to bed consistently at midnight, I can't just be like, right, 9 p.m, gotta get to bed. It's just not gonna happen. And if it does, by some miracle, even if I took, even if I was to take sleeping pills, it would be terrible sleep. So that trumps consistency come first. That will improve the quality. And then the length of time is more based on kind of getting to bed earlier over time and not having to wake up early. But like I said, for sometimes that's not possible. So that's why most people would try and get to bed earlier rather than trying to wake up later. Like a part of me would love to wake up at 9, 8, even 8 a.m. every day, but I can't. And I'm sure most of you can't either. Secondly, diet. Now obviously that helps sleep as well. So some of these things go hand in hand. So for example, reducing stress. Now that's a real blanket term because some of you just absolutely can't. If you work in NHS, for example, if you work in the police, good luck trying to reduce your stress because it ain't gonna happen. Not fully anyway. You're not gonna fully reduce your stress, and most people aren't. But there are things you can do to reduce stress. That's definitely another video. But that will help you sleep as well. But things like diet will help you sleep. So for me personally, again, the biggest things were cutting out processed foods. Huge fan of cheesecake. Huge fan of ice cream. Love dairy. I'll actually speak about me kind of going vegetarian, but how I don't think I have the strength of will to go fully vegan because of the dairy. I've always liked dairy, and I don't really get issues with the old stomach, so I'm quite lucky in that sense. But for me, cutting out processed foods was huge, and also, what have we got there? So yeah, cutting out processed foods and hydration. But the processed food part for me was actually, it was definitely about sweets, sweet stuff, but it was also things like bacon, and I'd have bacon and sausages every morning, and then wonder why I felt really sluggish all the time. And then I'm not telling anyone to go vegetarian. I do not have any agenda at all. But for me personally, when I cut out those kind of processed meats, waking up feeling fine, even if I sleep 1 or 2 hours, which is quite usual for me. Even if I sleep 1 or 2 hours, I'm kind of alright. By the way, I just have a real bad sleeping issue. I've had it since I was a kid. When people tell me that they have bad sleeping issues, I'm kind of like, tell me about it. But yeah, and then hydration, drinking enough good liquids. We talked about this before, especially when it's hot. We know that the gym we train at, especially at Bounce, is horrendously hot when the weather's hot, and that is gonna make you kind of, those of you who complain about feeling a little bit faint after cleans, that's probably a huge factor. Diet, eating enough good food, whole foods, enough of it as well, by the way, but also drinking, if anything, more than enough. Don't go crazy, but more than enough. Number 3, extras. I call it extras as in like extra training, basically. Prehab, rehab, I know some of the people who work in physiotherapy, etc., don't like the word prehab. Or S&C people don't like the word prehab. Usually, this kind of doing extra movement stuff is your prehab, but the rehab side in particular. So obviously, I've got a real bad shoulder. As obviously it's a birth injury, so it's a little bit different. But I have to continuously rehab it and prehab it if I'm serious about snatching kind of 150, there's no hope in hell if I don't do extra stuff that help my shoulder. So for example, the one I've been doing for the last couple of months is every morning when I first wake up, I've got a little shoulder circuit. It usually involves 100 band pull aparts, shoulder cars, stretches for the shoulders, mainly the anterior delts and the lats. That's just they're my problem areas because of the issue I have. But stuff like that, it takes 10-15 minutes in the morning. I have the luxury of having a job that makes me able to do that. I don't kind of have to rush up, wake up, but that's it. And then stretching and mobility. So this ties in very well with sleep. What I've found is that stretching for 10, 15 minutes before I go to bed always relaxes me, always helps me go to sleep. Obviously, getting off your phone, before you go to bed is another huge one. But that kind of thing is really going to help you. Stretching obviously will the best way to put this, it stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system. So that's when we're talking about fight or flight, and then the other two are sleep with other things. That will help the sleep aspect of the parasympathetic. So parasympathetic effort basically brings everything down. So it does not elevate your heart rate like the fight or flight. It will decrease your heart rate and blood pressure, and that's what gives the feeling of relaxation. That's why a lot of people fall asleep apparently in yoga classes. Obviously they could just be tired, they could just have a tough job, but that's one of the reasons why it gets you really relaxed. So an extra movement stuff for me, that's basically around shoulders and hips. It's not complicated at all. 1990 Shoonbox example is a really good one for the hips. Shoulder cars are a really good example. A lot of stuff on my YouTube, if you look on the playlists, got movement flows. A lot of it's seated anyway. I know Dario and Lewis Basham are quite good. They quite enjoy them, and that's helped them a lot, especially in the hips and the shoulders. I'm always constantly updating stuff, but you can find that anywhere. That's good information on Instagram and whatnot. And then the final one. This is probably the biggest one, but also probably this is a real 1%er. Like if you get a good night's sleep, that could be 5% of performance. But psychology and learning. So how many of you come into training and just lift and don't think about it at all? This is something I've only started doing recently actually. Purposeful practice, having real intent behind it, not just going through the motions, actually thinking about what you're doing, what you're trying to achieve. So for me at the moment, I think this new jerk widening the grip technique, I'm thinking about getting in, warming up with that, then I'm actually thinking about the feeling of my hand moving out, the feeling of my right hand moving out, how it feels on the shoulders, how it pulls me forward on the toes a little bit, and how I've got to correct for that. I'm not just thinking, I'm going to clean it and then just do this and jerk. I'm actually thinking about it a little bit more before I lift. And then mental rehearsal, which is something that people can spend hours doing it. It is really useful. There's a story of, I cannot remember who, but it was a weightlifter, I believe in the 80s, Soviet weightlifter, was very, very badly injured a little bit before the Olympics, very badly injured. Had to have surgery. His time frame for recovery was basically he would be recovered-ish about 2 weeks before the games, and he had about 3 or 4 months out. During that time, all he did was, I think it might have been a knee injury, all he did was kind of low-level walking with crutches, and then all he did was mentally rehearse snatching 180. So he just thought about the feelings, the emotions, the smells, all the muscle contractions of 180 snatch, and he ended up getting third at the Olympics when he only just getting back. So he basically just trained with that. Now, obviously, it's not as powerful as, obviously he had an incredible training base. It's not as powerful as training, but in conjunction with training, it's very useful. And it's one of those things where just before you set up for the bar, any snatch, any clean jerk, even from 20 kilos upwards, 15 kilos upwards for the ladies, just take 5 seconds to think about the movement, rehearse it in your head, and it will go better. And then the final one is mental health in general. Now, obviously, I'm not a clinical expert, but if that needs assessing, then obviously find a clinical expert. Anyone who needs to talk to me about that can do, but obviously everyone knows I'm quite an advocate for that. If that is going down because of life events, fair enough, it's life events, but that is going to be one of those things where it might impact your performance a little bit, probably because it affects everything else as well. But yeah, look, if you're coming up to maximum amount of time, if anyone has any questions, let me know. I hope it was as useful as everyone thought. This is a mess. Enjoy your weekend.